topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Mindset Marketing Mastery, the show that brings you the top speakers in the marketing and video industry. With your host, Marie Mason.
Oh, I just love that beat. Okay, it just gets you all revved up, doesn't it? I don't know. So I want to say thank you so much for everybody who has been contributing to the show for this whole last year. Oh my gosh. From my radio tech who rocks it the house every week with doing all the radio tech stuff is Rebel Medler. She is fantastic to work with. Love working with her. Cheryl Bernstein is my co-host and my lovely and talented co-host who is not here today because she's got some other things going on. And then of course we had Easter over the weekend. So I hope y'all enjoyed your Easter holidays. And just want to also let you know, Dean Piper is the owner of W4CY.com radio, and without him, we wouldn't have the StreamYard link every week. So, and getting lots of good tips on how to make our little tweaks and improvements and so forth. So, you guys are my dream team, and I love working with you. So, thank you for making this week and every week rock and stuff like that. So, I wanted to give you all a quick shout out and appreciate you guys because without y'all, the show would not be here, and especially our lovely guests. Every week we have an amazing guest that shows up, and just like this week as well. So I won't be taking too much longer into his talk because he's got an impressive talk talking about something really amazing. So welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason, myself, and our lovely talented co-host, Cheryl Bernstein. Like I said, we'll be back next week, and we are going to have so much fun again on our show tonight, as we do every week. And I miss my calling as a comedian, so you guys get to have a captive audience. So that's my claim to fame for right now. So, but anyway, before we bring up our guests, I did want to give another big shout out. My mom, Regina Van Doren, celebrated her 85th birthday on April 2nd, 2021, and she is an amazing mom and a big supporter of me, and I cannot do life without her. And my husband, who has been my husband for 18 years, his name happens to be Kelly, and he just turned 54 yesterday. So happy birthday to my husband. So just real quick, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Regina and Kelly. Happy birthday to you. Okay, now so I tried doing that in a 5-minute window. And hopefully I did it quickly. So wanted to make sure you guys had that, and wanted to let you know, please make sure you check out our shop. Our radio shop has merchandise. It's got at least 17 different items to choose from that are great for gifts, for birthdays, anniversaries, and so much more. And this is one of our cups. So hopefully you can see it in here. Let me make sure I get it in the right thing. So there's the cup. You can go to it. And oh my gosh, it is an amazing cup. It is dishwasher safe. It's microwavable safe. I like to drink my tea in it. I'm a tea drinker. Those who like to have coffee. Whatever works, whatever floats your boat. So anyway, sometimes I even put water in there. You never know. But it's a great gift. And we have a white version, and it's only 11 ounces. And this is the, I think, 15-ounce one. So yeah, great coffee mug. Great for travel. So anyway, please go to our shop called libertyvirtualsolutions.com/shop and check out our merchandise. And we even have backpacks to hats, all sorts of great stuff. The backpacks are great for going back to school in, which is coming up next fall. It's not too far, a few months down the road. So with that, oh my gosh, don't want to take more of the time than a few minutes because we have a jam-packed subject matter. Our guest today, oh my gosh, you are going to have so much fun with him. He has been practicing management consultant and has been the author of 2 books, and his most recent is titled Leveraging the Genetics of Leadership. So he's going to give us some secrets about leadership and cracking the code of sustainable team performance. Who doesn't need a team that stays consistently with you? I've been blessed to have a team. Some people on my virtual event team, oh my gosh, they have been with me for 2+ years. So I can't do my business without their support and their and influence. And oh my gosh, when you support yourself with a team who believes in what you're trying to do, you're unstoppable. I'm just gonna say. So you're not, you may be in a business for yourself, but you're not by yourself when you're in a leadership role. I'm just gonna let you that up front. So he has figured out some secrets of the code, the secrets, and I'm sorry if I'm saying it incorrectly, but it's cracking the code of sustainable team performance. So we're gonna get some juicy tips out of that. And this book demonstrates how elite organizations are revolutionizing the practice of leadership, transforming the world of work, and setting new standards for employee engagement and the customer value. And in his consulting practice, Dan helps senior leaders design high impact cultures of courageous and engaged employees. Hmm, guess there's something to be said for if they're engaged, they're going to stick with you, right? So, anyway, today's topic is on creating a culture of collaboration. Oh my gosh, are we going to get some strategy today? So, take it away. Dan, are you here?
Great. Thank you, Marie. Yes, I'm here. I'm just thrilled to be with you.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you. We had a great time getting to know each other in the last couple of weeks, haven't we?
Fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just was curious. What? How did you choose your career path? I was just kind of curious.
Well, it's easier to say, well, it chose me. Um, I've always been interested in organizations and how organizations work and how they perform. The subject of the book, though, really found me. I've been doing management consulting for 25-ish years now, and several years ago, I began to see just a massive disconnect between senior leaders' understanding of their employees and the actual experience of the employees. Invariably, I would go into an organization and I ask this question, well, how would you define or identify your competitive advantages? And invariably, they would say, oh, it's our staff, it's our employees. We have marvelous employees. They do their miraculous every month. We couldn't get along without them. It's like, well, okay, that's probably true. Then I would start working with their employees. And what I consistently found was employees that are exhausted, they feel underappreciated. If they're not looking for a job, they're waiting for retirement. The company or the organization is not getting the best value from their employees. Their employees are not giving the best of themselves. And so it just one day, and then there's a series of events, but with this one day, it just struck me, this is almost criminal that so many members of the workforce, Gallup actually says it's 2/3 of the workforce,
Wow.
goes to work, does their job, goes home, and they don't care. Within that, there's a few that are actually drilling holes in the back of the lifeboat. Only a third of employees actually look forward to going to work every day and giving the best of themselves. And so when I saw that, I thought, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to fix that.
Awesome. No, I think that's great. And I can hear your passion about leadership. Is that correct?
Yeah, get me going on it. I won't stop.
Well, we won't get too much going on that one then. We'll go on to the next question. So, I know you have so many great ideas, but the first thing that comes to mind is you talked about systems, and I wanted to ask you, could you define what a system is? Like,
Yeah.
and then we'll talk about the how-tos.
Okay, great question. And when I started doing the research for the book, that's the first thing I had to figure out was, what is a system? It's a word that we use all the time, especially in business. We talk about, systems for this, that, and the other thing. We talk about data systems and financial systems, but really, what is a system? And as it turns out, we work and live and breathe in a world of systems every day. And we move from one system to another most of the time without even understanding it or recognizing it. Within the human body, Marie, right now, your body and mine, there are 11 different systems, objectively, readily identified systems that are functioning independently, but yet in support of the whole. Technically, a system is nothing more than an organism, if you will, that takes a handful of small elements, a small number of elements, but organizes them in a specific way that produces an outcome. So your circulatory system right now is circulating nutrients and gases throughout your body and mine. And the way it does that is quite simple. There's a pump and there's some arteries and veins, and it circulates.
Mhm.
When we make the jump, though, to organizations, we find the same thing. Only most organizations don't necessarily design their systems. They may design a financial system. They may design a customer relationship system or go buy one off the shelf. But we don't think about things like leadership, about operational and organizational performance as systems. But when we do understand that those are systems that can be designed, then we start leveraging the power of systems design. One piece of which is one of the attributes of a system is that systems always take more, they create more value than the sum of the parts. So a quick story about that. When my son was in the 6th grade, he decided to try out for the school basketball team. And it really wasn't much of a tryout because he was going to a small school that was so small they could just barely field a team.
Wow.
And but they had a coach who didn't know a whole lot about coaching. He had played some basketball in college, but he had this idea that he wanted to teach young boys how to play unselfish team basketball. And so he started teaching these boys not just the X's and O's of how to play basketball, but how to play basketball unselfishly with the team first. And what I'd love to say is the first year my son played basketball, they won their league championship. But the reality is that they lost every one of their games. But he had been teaching them to play for and with each other, so nobody quit. Second year, they did a little bit better. They won about half their games.
Hmm.
Third year, same school, same set of boys, small school, so small they could barely field a team. No superstar athletes. Boys of modest athletic ability went undefeated.
Wow. It kind
And
of reminds me of what's this called? Raising Titans, or
yeah,
whatever that movie. I can't
yep,
remember the exact
yep,
title, but yeah,
yep, yep,
reminds me just
yep,
of that story.
yeah.
Awesome.
But what Coach Will had done, though, he put together a system of how to play the game of basketball that took boys of average athletic ability and turned them into rock stars.
Awesome.
And we see that with organizations that are consistently performing at an extraordinary high level. They do exactly the same thing with their approach to leadership. They design a system and then they coach, teach, and train every leader and every manager to the requirements of the system. And the result is that men and women of average leadership ability can turn into rock stars and they perform like champions.
Excellent. No, that's awesome. So, and that really kind of gives an idea and paints the picture for us too of what systems, how they can make a difference.
Mhm.
So, I do have a question for you.
Okay.
What was how was his system? I mean, to get the boys to perform in that way, because
Yeah.
it's a gradual process. It wasn't done overnight.
Nope, nope. And that's a great question and a great observation, Marie. Systems don't just pop up overnight and just automatically function at the highest level. But it really starts with every system has a purpose. It has an output, and it doesn't matter if it's a system, if it's one of the examples I talk about, it's wastewater treatment system. That is a system. It has an output. You take sewage in, and on the other end of the pipe, there's clean, drinkable water. And the Coach Will's basketball system was exactly the same thing. There was a purpose to it. There was an output, and it was that boys. The best opportunity to win games was for those boys to play unselfish team basketball. It wasn't even about winning and losing. It was playing to a system that would give them the best opportunity to win, and it was about team basketball. So one of the things that I discovered in my research is that high impact organizations do exactly the same thing. I'll give you one example. So one of the groups that I looked at is an award-winning hospital. They are consistently ranked as one of the safest hospitals in America. Some have even speculated one of the safest hospitals in the world.
Awesome.
Which may not sound like too much because we assume that hospitals are safe, but the reality is accidental deaths in hospitals is a leading cause of death in America.
Wow.
161,000 people die every year because of accidental and avoidable deaths in hospitals.
Scary number.
Scary number.
Even higher than COVID?
Yeah, well, that's a different animal.
I had to ask because
yeah,
right now that's prevalent in what's been going on the last year.
Well,
so
yeah,
I don't know if that number changed since then.
it would just change the ranking.
Exactly.
But this hospital operates off of a single value of respect. So if you are a leader in this hospital, you understand that your primary goal, your primary output is to generate a culture of respect. Respect that starts with the worker, respect that starts with the work itself, that the healthcare is a respectable profession, that the work itself is to be respected, and respect for the patient. And so that culture of respect drives everything that they do. One real simple example of how that works out in a very practical way, the hospital happens to be, I think it's a 10-story hospital. It sits inside of a hill. And so from the top floor, you have a commanding view of a beautiful city, a beautiful waterfront, snow-capped mountains to the east and to the south. So if you're operating off of a value of respect for the worker, respect for the work, respect for the patient, where do you think the executive offices go?
That's a good question. I couldn't tell you, but I know it's going to be they're going to be respected as well.
Well, most large organizations would probably put their executive office suites in places of prominence.
Okay.
The corner office with a window. That's the classic thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
You weren't saying physical. You flipped the switch on me too quickly.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
But in this hospital, again, based on a value of respect, executive offices are in the basement.
Wow.
Because for a number of reasons. One, there's no value in putting executive offices on the top floor with a commanding view of the city. Second of all, if you're operating off a value of respect for the patients, where do you want to put the patient waiting rooms and exam rooms? Do you want to put them in the basement? Or do you want to put them in a place of prominence where they have the commanding view of a beautiful city?
Well, they want the room with a view, of course.
Exactly.
like a hotel almost.
They're paying the bills. So based on a culture of respect, that's where they are. In fact, there's kind of a funny story. A couple of years ago, they were getting ready to open up a new oncology clinic, and they had built the thing out. They were just designing where the offices and the exam rooms were going to go and all that. And they brought all of the physicians in, and immediately they started laying claim to all of the offices that were just on paper. They started laying claim to all the offices up against the beautiful windows with a commanding view of the city.
Wow.
And finally, one of them said, well, wait a minute. How is that consistent with a culture of respect? And they all sort of went, oh gosh darn. Put their offices against the back wall so that the patients could have those commanding view of the city.
Wow, that's impressive. But it makes sense because they want to be able to keep in within their culture. So
Exactly.
and their brand, and keep all the values all aligned with everything they're doing. So
Yep, and that's a critical point about leadership in general, is to keep those values and those behaviors aligned. And Marie, that's the perfect word, to keep them lined up. And that's where a lot of organizations go astray and don't have that sustainable performance because those values and those behaviors are not lined up.
that's true, and that's where systems fall apart, is when things are not aligned, or when people aren't in line with those values and systems too.
Precisely.
So yeah, that's where the breakdown comes in. Makes perfect sense. So then I wanted to ask you, and if I can hopefully remember where I was, did we touch yet about how we design the systems, or did we already go through that, or?
Well, the how to, we touched on it, but the how to really begins with, what do you want? What's the output of the system? So in this hospital, it was really a culture of respect. But as it turns out, in the research that I was doing, the output of the leadership system always, and I would underscore always, reflects the experience of the workforce. It always reflects the experience of the workforce. So what I found were organizations that used respect for one. I found another healthcare system up in Anchorage, Alaska, that serves 66,000 Native Americans. Their geographic span goes from the Canadian border all the way out to the Aleutian Islands in the far west or far east. They operate off of a value of relationship and story. And relationship and story is culturally embedded into how they live and how tribes live and operate. I also found an organization, it actually was a elementary school. They operate off of principle of collaboration and love and grace.
We will have to get to a commercial break, so we will have to talk more about the teachers, that school example, which is cool because I actually had a background as a preschool teacher. I taught for 20 years, 15 in the schools and 5 years as my own home daycare. So
Cool.
I definitely want to hear about this. But I want to thank Dan Edds for sharing his valuable tips on how to, for our audience, and how to get healthier, and actually in this case, healthier in their businesses, so to speak. Also, how to grow their business and themselves, and their collaborating with others, and really showing how to be a good leader in their business. So right here, we are on the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show, and Dan has actually agreed to stick around for the second half of the show, where he's going to talk more about a little example about a teacher. Oh, you don't want to miss this one, because we talked about that, and it's really, really good information. Plus, lots of other tips on how to be doing that, working on that collaboration and building that trust and value inside your team. And I think that's what it is that we're going to be talking about, plus some systems too that we can put in place. So that ends this segment of our show. So you're listening to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason, and we'll be right back, and we're going to commercial break now.
We're taking a short break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Marketing Mindset Mastery, the show that brings you the top speakers in the marketing and video industry, with your host, Marie Mason. The show is brought to you by Liberty Virtual Solutions. We work with business coaches and speakers to help them market and host their webinars and upsell their coaching programs and develop heart-centered relationships with their audience. Welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Show with your host, Marie Mason, a premier podcast that helps you master your marketing skills.
Welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show with your host, Marie Mason. And we are with our guest, Dan Edds, who the last 25 years has been practicing management consultant. He's been giving so many juicy tips today, so I appreciate him coming back. He is the author of 2 books, and his most recent titled Leveraging the Genetics of Leadership and Discovered the Secrets of the Code of Sustainable Team Performance. This book demonstrates how elite organizations are revolutionizing the practice of leadership, transforming the world of work, and setting new standards for employee engagement and customer value. He is definitely disrupting the workforce in a mighty way. So in his consulting practice, Dan helps senior leaders design and high-impact cultures of courageous and engaged employees. And today's topic is creating culture of collaboration. So take it away, Dan. We're back, and we're going to talk about that teacher example about collaboration, because she was fantastic and how she did that in her whole community, I think, because the school is a community, right? I mean, it's safe to say. Yeah. So
well, I started hearing about this school actually several years ago, and how it was consistently outperforming on multiple levels other schools in the same district. And this is a school of 450 students. At the time this story took place, it was 65% free and reduced lunch, which means it's moderately, maybe more than moderately, ethnically and economically diverse.
Definitely.
And so I heard about this school, and I thought, the principal would be interesting to talk to. So I made an appointment. I was honored and delighted when she agreed to meet with me. And so I sat down with her one morning just before school got out in the spring, and I said, I want to talk to you about your approach to leadership. And her first reaction was literally exactly what she said: leadership? I don't know anything about leadership.
Who does these days?
Yeah. So I said, well, if there was 1 or 2 words that you would describe your approach to leadership, what would they be? And without hesitation, she said, well, this won't be very popular, but love and grace. And I thought, cute. There's 450 kids coming to school every day. It's nice that they had a principal who loved them. And she was like reading my mind. She shook her head. She said, that's not the way I'm thinking about these words. She said, I think about love and grace as a pathway to collaboration and an experience of my team. And when she said team, she was referring to vice principal, assistant principal, nurse, a school nurse, counselors, teachers, obviously, custodians, janitors, everybody that had some kind of contact with that school and that student and their students. And she said, these words remind me that I could have a difficult conversation with a staff person before it erupts, but do it in a spirit of love and grace. And she said, it means that I can work with people in our community, but do it in a spirit of love and grace. And then she went on to describe for me the most eloquent system of leadership I found outside the United States Army. And the first thing that she described for me was, it's I call it the backbone of the DNA molecule. It's the double helix. It was love and grace as a pathway to collaboration. Wow. And both of those ideas reflect the experience of her team. You go to work for that particular school with her as the principal, and you can expect to work in a culture of high collaboration. But the foundation for that is
It's love
love,
and grace.
is love and grace. Yes.
Yeah.
And in the conversation, she never again used the term grace until the very end. And I had one more thing I wanted to ask her about, which was innovation, because that's sort of the last piece of this model of a leadership system is innovation. And so finally I said, okay, you haven't talked about innovation, or you haven't talked about grace. You've talked about love. What about this idea of grace? And she pulls back the sleeve of her blouse and she shows me the word grace that's tattooed on her wrist.
Aw.
And she says, and she points to it, she says, "This is how we do innovation." And I was surprised because that was the last thing I wanted to ask her about. So I said, "Okay, explain that to me." She said, "It takes 10 years for a good idea to get out of the halls of academia into the classroom."
Wow.
She said, "That's too long." She
Mhm.
said, "Because we're trying to build a culture of collaboration, I want my teachers to feel like they can take a risk. And if it means, teaching math a little bit differently for 2 weeks, that's what I want my teachers to do, to be willing and able and confident enough that if they take a little bit of a risk, it may not work. And when it doesn't work," she said, "we have to have the ability to forgive ourselves and move on." And she said,
Yep.
teachers are passionate about teaching and they have to be able to forgive themselves." And if she says that, she points out multiple Kleenex boxes around her office. She said, "That's what happens when a teacher is passionate about their profession and passionate about teaching children, and maybe a great idea doesn't work."
No, I get that. That's as a former teacher, I can totally relate.
Yeah.
In fact, half of our ideas get chucked out the window because they're great in theory, but it's not always something that's
Yeah.
something we
Yeah.
can do in practicum. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so, I was curious about how she actually ended up going about designing a leadership system. And it's really very, very instructive. First thing she did was she pulled in, when she took over this school, it was the lowest performing school out of a total of 18 elementary schools in the district.
Wow.
There was open infighting amongst the staff. The prior principal had been basically run out by the teachers union. So
Mm.
I thought she did a brilliant job. One of the first things she did was she brought the entire team together um, before school started in the fall, including the custodians. And she did a number of things, but one of which is she got everybody to talk about rules. I mean, every organization has rules. The ones we think about are the obvious ones, the written rules, but the real powerful rules are those that are unwritten. And so they took a fair bit of time just identifying every rule, even places where there should have been rules, but there weren't.
Yeah.
And she said, we went around the room until it was quiet, and then we had every rule, up on a wall and a poster board somehow. She said, when it got quiet, she said, I told the team, okay, let's rewrite our own rules. And so they went about rewriting a set of rules of how they would interface, how they would collaborate, how they would react and work together as a team. She also identified some new routines that could have gotten her in trouble with the teachers union, but didn't, and as well as some behaviors. They put all of that into a team charter.
Wow.
And it's like maybe a page, it's not complicated, but it's things like, we want to go home at the end of the day optimistically hopeful about our work. Therefore, this is how we will behave towards one another. And that's one of the things that I found in almost every high performing organization I looked at. They all had some kind of a document that summarized how they were all going to work together as a team. So that in Aaron's case, if someone chose not to behave according to this charter, it wasn't Aaron, the principal that was letting them go, they were basically taking themselves off the team. And so it dramatically impacted her ability to manage and coach and train her leaders, because it was the team that had identified and co-created that charter.
That's awesome.
So if they chose not to perform to the requirements of the charter, they took themselves off the team.
Wow, that's impressive. So she just pretty much exemplified everything that you taught in your book, correct? Am I correct in understanding that?
Yeah, in fact, it was so close. It was so in line. When I'm talking to her, this is not exaggeration. I have this graphic in my mind, and she was going down my graphic, starting from the top, going down to the bottom, in perfect sequence to the way I had it laid out. It was almost unnerving. But
So you pretty much gave us the blueprint in a sense.
yeah, yeah, I did. So, but what was interesting about that conversation? And she said love and grace, and I misunderstood what she was saying. At the same breath, she was kind of embarrassed about it. She said, this is not going to be popular. Yet, when I walked out of her door, I said, by the way, don't ever be embarrassed about talking about love and grace. And I said, this is the reason why. As part of the research for this project, I had an amazing lunch with a full colonel of the United States Army, 34-year veteran, U.S. Army Ranger, spent most of his time serving with the Special Forces. I said I also had the opportunity to interview a retired 4-star general who holds 3 Purple Hearts. He's led men in the most extreme environment. He was a chief liaison officer to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He served it with NATO. And when he retired from the Army, he went on to serve in the Clinton administration as with a cabinet position. And I said, both of those U.S. Army officers used almost the exact same words you did. I said, when I asked them about the Army's approach to leadership, both of them said servant leadership. And in the next breath, they're talking to me about love and learning how to love a soldier. And I said, both of you are saying almost exactly the same thing. That when you serve your people, when you serve your soldiers, whether it be soldiers on a battlefield or your soldiers in the classroom, when you serve them, or in the business, right?
Yes.
When you serve them, it's not about some emotional, mushy-gushy, sentimental emotion of love, but it's an action. It's a verb. And when I asked the general how the Army reinforces the practice of servant leadership, he mentioned 3 activities. I'll just mention one. But and he said, when a company or a platoon is getting on a helicopter to go out on a mission, he said it's the highest performing officer that is the last to get on that helicopter. He said it's not out of being polite. He said it's demonstrating that officer, his number one responsibility is to protect, care for, and make sure and take care of the welfare of his soldiers. And he said when that hot helicopter lands, whether it's on a base someplace or whether it's in a hot landing zone with bullets flying, he said it's the highest ranking officer that gets off that helicopter first, because they are putting themselves in harm's way first, somewhat symbolically, but as a means of protecting their workforce, of protecting their soldiers. And when that happens, they end up loving their soldiers. And the Army operates off of a core value, several, but this is one of them, of selfless service, which they define as putting the welfare of the nation, the Army, and your subordinates above your own welfare. What would our schools, our hospitals, our manufacturing companies, our high-tech companies, hospitals, et cetera, even government, what would those organizations look like if every leader and every manager was coached and trained to put the welfare of their customers, the welfare of their company, and the welfare of their subordinates above their own welfare?
Be a changed world. We wouldn't have the pointing fingers, the stabbing of the back. Oh my gosh, we'd be actually having a caring community.
It would
Yep,
radically
yep,
transform the workplace and people's
definitely.
lives along the way.
Oh, definitely. What and you nailed it perfectly, because one of the things that I stress in my team is there is no I am or pointing fingers or he said, she said, or any of that nonsense on my team. It's all focused on collaboration. We learn from each other. We
Hmm.
work towards a common goal. That common goal is to serve our clients with excellence.
Yep.
And I don't accept anything less. So I create that culture as well, and very similar to what you did. Now, do we fall short? I'll admit we drop the ball occasionally because we're still
Yep.
going through our growing pains like
Yep.
anything else.
Yep.
But we do that, and when we do it to learn from it, the experience,
Yep.
not to point fingers. Like
Right.
I know that somebody else made that mistake, but I'm going to take the full responsibility and say, as
Yep.
the owner, and says
Yep.
somewhere along the line we must have dropped the ball on
Yep.
something,
Yep.
but here's how we go about to fix it and move
Right.
forward.
Right.
And I wish more people would look at it in that way. I'll give you an example. Chick-fil-A is a great company in that respect. They
Hmm.
have a spirit of collaboration
Hmm.
and excellence, just like you pictured and displayed and shared with us today. So I do have some other questions for you. I don't want to
Sure.
get too because I know we're winding down the less than the 10 minutes of show, believe it or not. And I may have to have you come back because there's so much to learn from you, if that's okay with you. So
Honored to.
love having people, repeat people. We're not going to get to every question. So, but one of the things I want to ask are, um, can you talk about some of the things like I know we want to talk about a whole bunch of them, but I'm going to skip ahead about a company's values. We touched about it a
Mhm.
little bit,
Yep.
and then um, and I'm thinking of in terms of having the team and taking your team and experiencing that trust. How do we develop that trust and connecting that with giving them
Yeah.
tasks to do and relating it to the company values? I
Yeah.
think that's like a very long-winded question, but I think
Yeah.
it's a very relevant question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an extraordinarily relevant question, Murray. And what I found really was a surprise. It was one of the major ahas in doing the research with these really high impact organizations that are performing at a high level for a long period of time, not a year, two or three, but for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or longer. And what I found was number one, they had fewer core values. My opinion right now is that most organizations have too many. They're too unwieldy, and they're too many of them they mean the same thing. But what I found was organizations like actually this hospital that I referenced, they have one: respect, and everything is driven off of that one value of respect. But the other thing I found with that particular hospital and with so many other organizations is that they put more emphasis on behaviors of leaders, behaviors of employees than they do core values. And here's why. A behavior is just the human modeling of the value. So your comment about trust. Well, most organizations would have a value of trust. It's sort of like respect. It's just a good idea. Everybody needs a value of trust. But what does that mean, though, in terms of behavior? Well, obviously, it means to that that every individual leader must behave in a way that's worthy of trust. So, in this particular hospital, they actually have 10. They have one value, but they have 10 foundational behaviors. And when I was taking my tour guide pointed out a laminated poster that had each of these 10 values listed on them. And on the top, it says foundational behaviors. But what really captured my attention was that people had put their initials on several of these behaviors. And she explained to me that those are the initials of the executive leadership team saying to the public, this is the behavior that I'm going to work on this year. I'm going to focus on this behavior this year. So, one of the behaviors that actually two of them that I found interesting and I happen to remember, one of which is listening to understand. So, in other words, what they're saying, if you are a leader in this organization, one of your behaviors is to learn to listen, but not just hearing, but listening to understand what what someone is actually trying to tell you. The other behavior that I found interesting was to speak up. Not only a behavior that they wanted their leaders to model, but they wanted every individual person, all the way down to the person who was cleaning bedpans and washing the dishes, to speak up. If they saw an opportunity to improve a system, improve a process, or in a more extreme case, in an operating room, to speak up. And they coached and taught and trained every leader that they have to lead in such a way that their subordinates are free and confident enough in their own person as well as their own organization to speak up. So do I have time for just a quick little story about that?
We have about 3 minutes left, so I have a feeling that we may have to say it. Can you do it like in one sentence or two?
Very quickly. Almost 20 years ago now, a much loved grandmother is laying on a hospital bed. She's getting prepped for surgery, an aneurysm. Somebody injected her with a clear dye, clear liquid. Unfortunately, there were 3 clear liquids on the table. She was instead of being injected with a dye, she was injected with an antiseptic. She was dead within 3 days.
Wow.
But out of that experience, they began to recognize that they needed to have a culture where everybody felt the freedom and the confidence to speak up if they saw something going wrong. So we are not surprised today to find out that they are consistently ranked as one of the safest hospitals in America, because everybody is not only free, but has the confidence to look and to speak up. And their leadership models those behaviors.
Gotcha. That's brilliant. I'm sorry about the incident with your grandmother, or with your family member, but it was a great lesson for all of us to be aware that we need to be able to speak up and let people know that you need to
Yep.
make this change, right?
Right.
So, and for the better and the good of everyone, not to point fingers.
Right.
So that's a good point. So I loved how you said that, about a great example of how to grow themselves and their leadership and working on their behavior. Great job. You have something that you wanted to share. Let's get to that real quick, and then we're going to have to close out the show, believe it or not, and we'll have to get you come back.
Well, thank
So,
you, Marie. It would be an honor to come back and chat with you anytime. But I do have a special report. If your listeners would like to access the special report on, actually, I have 3 of them. They have if they want them. But one is creating a culture, how to create a culture of courage. And I think that might be of interest to your audience. Go to my website, Daniel Edds, DANIELEDDS.com. Go to the resource page, and there's a way to download these 3 special reports, and I'd be delighted to offer them to your audience.
right. And we have you. I don't have that link that you gave it to me. So, if you would type it in our little chat in our StreamYard chat, that would be great. So I can
Sure.
repeat it. But the one I have is the riseupcreatives.com/join. Can you tell me about that one?
I'm sorry. What was the one again?
It's www.riseupcreatives.com/join. Is there something special with that you mentioned?
That's not mine.
Okay, so maybe I had the wrong link. That's why I gave the wrong link. Okay, no wonder. Okay, this is why I had to make edits before the show. So anyway, so it's danielsedds.com. Excellent.
Right.
So grab that free information. So excellent. I just want to say thank you so much for Dan Edds for being on the show today. You gave so much valuable leadership tips that I know that many of us will be happy to apply to our own businesses. Also, make sure you guys do sign up for my free webinar that's coming up titled 5 Steps to Fill Your Webinar with Your Ideal Audience. And I'm going to give you the registration link. It's https://bit.ly/2p3hmq8. And sorry, when Bitly gives you those links, you can't do anything but say those links, right? So, and Dan's agreed to come back to the show to give us some more leadership skills because we haven't had so much to share and could only do it in a short period of time. So, definitely thank you so much for being here and giving that, creating that culture of collaboration, which is so prevalent to this day and age in our culture today. So, I want to encourage you to take advantage of his free gift, which is, and go to Daniel DANIELEDDS.com and grab your free gift from him as well. And it's all about collaboration. So that'll be a great gift to give to any business owner. And let me just close out the show. So next week, we're going to have another guest on our show who's going to be providing some more tips on how to set your business up for success. So join us again for the Marketing Mindset Mastery radio show, and where you can get some great tips and ideas and how-tos for marketing and your mindset and for making your marketing mindset work for you. Okay, I'm trying not to say that and get tongue-tied. Anyway, make sure you join us every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time right here at W4CY.com radio. And until next time, this is Marie Mason saying bye for now, and at Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Show, and we'll see you all next week. Have a great one. That ends the show this week.
Go to our radio page and check out the gifts from our speakers. We'll see you next time on Marketing Mindset Mastery with your host, Marie Mason.